hopefully real quick through Tellurian's 2022 Q3 quarterly results. There's a couple things that I pulled out of the 10Q that I want to talk through today. Before I begin, let me remind you that I'm not a financial advisor or a financial professional of any sort. All opinions that I express in this video are mine and do not represent those of any company or any other individual. I currently hold a long position in Tellurian, so this video should be for your entertainment purposes only, because I could be wrong about everything I say in this video. You need to do your own research before making any investment decisions. So, real quick, usually you want to relate this back to the stock, and it was a little bit interesting to see that yesterday there wasn't quite as much of a reaction to the quarterly results, and then today there was, if you just look at today's chart, stock went up 11% today. And that was a little bit puzzling. The only conclusion I can draw is that it wasn't directly because of the quarterly results. And, if you then assume that it is not because of the quarterly results, it's really not clear why Tellurian went up 11% today. But yeah, we'll take it anyways. Hi, Transient Stacker. Thanks for hopping on. I'm just going to go through the Q3 results. There honestly weren't too many surprises. I'll say that up front. I think, a couple things to call out, right? They still have plenty of cash on the balance sheet. They have, $600 million here. It's down from 800 and something from last quarter. And a lot of that obviously went to the acquisition of all the gas properties from Insight. And they spent, I think if I look through here, they spent about $50 million, paying driftwood construction costs. And they're actually up to, I think, $118 million spent year to date on that. Then, I always like to check when I watch companies to see if there's anything that changes on their liabilities. There's really not a whole lot that changed here, so that was actually good to see here. No surprises, right? You don't want to see surprises on the liabilities of your company that you're invested in. And the other thing here was that their common stock, this actually did not increase, actually decreased ever so slightly. I think it went down by about 1%, which isn't really significant. But the point is, like, they haven't been diluting, so that's good. Anyways, so moving on, the Insight acquisition was actually effective as of August 1st. And so they had, 2 months of production with the Insight acquisition and 1 month without it in the quarter. So, you do look at the results and you see that the natural gas sales are up drastically from where they've been in the past. Right? Year over year, it's ridiculous. They're up to, was that a 4x, 5x, more than a 5x from a year ago, as you'd expect. And then even just looking for the year, right, in this one quarter, they had about as much revenue as they had in the prior 6 months. So not really surprising there. We know that they acquired a lot of acreage there. And I actually put together, I have a couple of figures here. So look, I'm did some rough guesstimates in the math, and it looks like they're probably producing right now at about 3.4 BCF per month. I guess that's the takeaway here. One negative surprise, and I put in the description of the video, there were a couple negative surprises from this 10Q. One of them was the actual price of the acquisition. And so previously this has been reported at $125 million. And then they had some, when they finalized it, they said, oh, well, actually the price went up by $500,000 for no real satisfactory reason was given. They just said, well, it was some extra cost. And, I figure at that point, $500,000 on a $125 million deal, it's kind of a rounding error. Didn't really matter so much. But if you look at it now, in the 10Q, this comes out, they actually paid 134.9, so almost $10 million more from the original price. And so that was a little strange. There's not really a lot of explanation here as to why that was. So that doesn't really instill a whole lot of faith here, or confidence, I guess. Like, I'm not sure why they're trying to, I'm not sure why they don't have really much of an explanation here. Because one other thing to call out is that this is in addition to the $7.5 million, right? So that after they say, hey, this is how much we actually spent, $134.9 million to acquire those assets, it also says the sellers may receive an additional cash payment of $7.5 million, if the NYMEX Henry Hub gas price, is above a certain threshold in the future. So this is not related to that 7.5 million, right? That 7.5 million is in addition to that. So, Yeah, so didn't they say they would pay more if gas prices remain high? My understanding from that, what they said, that I knew of, what was this bit here, right, where they said, well, there's an optional payout of $7.5 million if gas prices are high in the future. But the way that I'm reading this in the 10Q is that both the price for the acquisition went up by about $10 million, in addition to also potentially paying out $7.5 million if gas prices are high. So at least for me, I did not think that there was anything other than just the $7.5 million. And so to see almost an additional $10 million here for the actual purchase price of the assets was a surprise to me. Maybe I got something wrong in the past, but that was I was, that was a surprise to me. I'll just put it that way. Anyways, it's done and over with, and did actually look at what their proved let's see, wells in progress. Yeah, so one other thing that I did look at here, sorry, this is just moving on, that they did report here, is to see what was the actual impact, the final impact of what is their upstream gas production, that arm of their business look like, that division, and actually pull some numbers into a spreadsheet, because if you just look at it here for what they report, like the numbers are, it's kind of hard to have a point of reference here. Just to call it out here, at the end of Q3, right, they had about $300 million worth of value in the proved properties, about $91 million in terms of wells in progress, or for the value of those. Then you subtract off the accumulated depreciation, and you have the total value of those assets at about $320 million. I pulled this together into a chart, pulled those numbers from the prior 6 quarters, just so we can sort of see how this has been changing over time. And it's maybe easiest to look at it on a chart down here, but I thought this was a little bit interesting to see the actual impact visually of the Ensight acquisition. You see that if you look at like the yellow line here, that's the sort of the bottom line that corresponds to this number here, their total upstream natural gas assets, net of depreciation. And you can see that yellow line, it was going up sort of slowly but sort of steadily, and then this quarter it was a huge jump up, right? Which is as you expect when they got all these, because they acquired assets, but like you actually can see the impact of it here. Of course, you see it in the revenues as well. And we should expect the revenues to be even higher in Q4, because they'll have 3 full months of operating with all of these assets, as opposed to just 2 months that they had in Q3. But the other interesting one that's real easy to actually sort of conceptualize, for me at least, is the producing well count, right? The number of wells that they have producing. And you can see over time, this was going up only very slightly, right? It was 72, 74, 78, 82, 84. So like it's going up by 2, by 4 or so per quarter. And then you look at the jump from the end of June to the end of September, it goes from 84 to 131. And so I thought, that really brings it home to say, wow, they made a huge jump here. That's like a 55% increase in just the count of wells, right? And obviously not every well is going to be exactly equal, but that's, it's a large increase in the number there. So that acquisition really did do a lot to increase their production, their current production capabilities. So it's good to see there. All right. I did touch a little bit already on, kind of the revenue and the results of operations here. Not a whole lot of, I guess, surprises here, but if you look at it, right, they ended up making just a tad bit of, actual income after all of their income from operations, right, after all of their expenses, including the G&A, which is huge. Then you subtract off the interest, you subtract off this other expense, which I think was mostly costs that money they lost on derivatives due to hedging. And then they ended up actually, losing money for the quarter, which is a little sad to see. I thought maybe they'd be profitable. I think they were on the verge of it last quarter, if I recall. So that was a little, it didn't really make me happy to see. I'm going to go through 1 or 2 things in just a moment that really made me made me unhappy as an investor. But overall, the business is at least moving in the right direction in terms of increasing, gas production and gas revenues. And that to say that, if they keep G&A down, they are going to have a massively, or not massive, but they are going to have a profitable, natural gas division there that comprises part of the company. Transient Stacker says Louisiana Oil and Gas Association reports wells every week. They have been having Tellurian at 3 wells. Oh, okay, that's interesting information. I did not know that. I'll have to let me take a note into that and see if that's something I can start tracking. Thank you for the point. I appreciate that. I'll have to look into that and see what I can find. That's great. One other thing before I go on to some of the other surprises is they did do a small change order. This was attached to the 10Q, and this was not really material. It's $10 million of additional work that they agreed to do to add on. I think adding on another road, basically, if I understand correctly. I don't really know the lingo that well, but that's the way that I'm kind of reading this. The one thing I thought was a little, I shouldn't say funny, but it hurts a little bit inside as an investor to see that there was this entire these are all change orders, right? They're sort of amendments onto the main large contract that Tellurian has with Bechtel, specifically the contract for phase 1. But they had this extra verbiage in here to say that, well, we are doing this and we are agreeing to add this on as an amendment, but we just want to make it clear. Where is that? And they talked about here, we're changing the contract price from what it used to be to this new one, which is, like I said, like $10 million additional. This is what I was looking for here. But they had this extra verbiage in here to make it very clear. Although we've updated the contract price here, that contract price is not valid. It stopped being valid on May 1st of 2022. And, you're going to have to refresh this further before they issue the full notice to proceed. And so that actually just underscores that we don't know at the current moment, we don't have a concrete set price for what is this going to cost, which has been one of the big unknowns, I know, for folks who are invested in the company and are really digging the details. That's been a frustrating piece that they haven't, they don't have that price locked in for very long, right? They haven't been able to do that. Like in the past, in years past, when they had it locked in for 6 months or a year, and they haven't been able to do that more recently. All right, couple other small things. That's small, but not really fun to see. There was this very, very strange note kind of just buried in here. The company issued a $5 million promissory note due June 14th, 2024 to an unaffiliated entity engaged in the development of infrastructure projects in the energy industry. It bears interest at a rate of 6%. That was a surprise, to me. Doesn't, personally, I don't really like that. And as I said, this is sort of one of a couple things in this report that started to make me a little less happy. There's, I understand the state of the company in a lot of places, but this one just is a bit of puzzling to me. And it does make me question what the company is doing a little bit in terms of the decisions that management is making here. Because it's not obvious to me why they should be issuing, loans to another company, especially at a rate of 6%, when they were just trying to raise, money themselves at a much higher rate than 6%, not that long ago. So that didn't really make me very, I don't know. This was not good. One other thing, sort of not quite in the same vein, but another place where I did not think I'm not happy with how they're using the money, as an investor. They donated $9 million. If you read through here and you say, well, they're talking about why was the G&A expense so high this quarter? Because it actually was. It went up by, we can look at this. The G&A for this quarter was $41.5 million. And I think that, last quarter was 20 something, right? So it's up a bunch. And 9 million of that was, as I just called out here, donations to a university to advance global energy research and other expenses in the normal course of business. And I think that's just the placeholder. But I think they're specifically saying they donated $9 million, to a university. And that was frustrating to see as an investor. I'm not sure why they are just donating to a university, right? At least the you know, at least the stuff up here, the investment that they did in, some other company in the energy space, and loaning money to a company in the energy space, there's a plausible future where they get that money back, and where it ended up being a good decision for the company. Donating to a university at this stage in the company's lifetime, at $9 million even, um, that doesn't. I didn't really like that. Um, I'm hoping you don't see too many more items like this in the future. I don't know what you think, Transient Stacker, or anyone else who's happens to be on the stream. I still haven't figured out how to get a good list of people who are reviewing. Um, but donating to a university just seemed like a bad use of funds at this point in the company's lifetime. Anyways, that was basically everything I had to go through today. There's not a whole lot of surprises in, or there's not anything major, I guess I should say, in the 10Q, right? There were some of these smaller surprises that mostly ended up being negative. They also did put out a new investor presentation. I'm not going to go through that today. I'll probably cover that in a future video when I have an updated rough valuation model of how I think things could go. And there's a lot of unknowns at this point, but I'm going to try to put something together. But yeah, that's everything I had for today. Transient Stacker, if you're still here, I don't know if you had any other questions or comments, anything you wanted to chat about here. I know I think you had commented about, sorry, this is totally off topic of Tellurian, but I know you had commented about bio-nanogenomics. I've been looking into that. I will, I'm still doing my research on that one. There's, I'm not quite as well versed in it, so I'll have to spend the time to get up to speed there, and I will have a future video talking about that company. All right, I will give it just a minute in case you have anything else to say, but then I'm gonna hop off. For anyone else who is watching, if it's, I do these streams live, usually late in the evenings. Usually not this late. This is actually after midnight. Usually I do these, 10 or 11 p.m. somewhere in that vicinity. I try to do them, as many nights as I can. Sometimes life gets busy, like it has been recently. Hasn't been too often, but this is basically, how I do this. Feel free to, stick around and hop on and chat with me live if you want. Oh, and Ladder. Hi, Ladder. Thanks for the video. Well, thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. James DeSirio says, thoughts on lack of quarterly conference call. Yeah, that's I mean, I don't like it, right? I think none of us like the fact they don't have a quarterly conference call. It would be real great to have a couple of the analysts be able to ask them some pointed questions. I think this is something that folks that I've, roughly talked to, all online, but since I started investing in the company in 2018, people sort of were grumpy that they don't do this, right? Because the company likes to paint a certain picture, and there's always some pretty obvious questions. There's usually some elephants in the room with Tellurian. There always have been, and it'd be real great to get some additional information, some additional color on a lot of stuff. But I'm invested despite the fact that they don't do that, and they don't have that level of transparency to let folks ask some questions. I'd love for them to have one. That would be great. I think maybe in their minds they think that putting out some additional information, like I know that Sharif does his videos, and they used to, back in the day, they used to do, Meg used to do the, I think, Chat with Tell, the little podcast where they'd have some prepared remarks, but that's not really the same as opening up to have some analysts ask some questions. And I think that would be, I'd love it if they did that, but they never have. I think it comes from basically having enough insider ownership to where they don't really have to answer too much to outside investors, because they have a lot of control of the board. And I don't know if that's still true. Once upon a time, a couple of years ago, they insiders held a lot more of the company than they do today. But they still hold a good chunk, to the point where they probably do control the board. So they're not really beholden too much to outside investors. Transient Stacker says, Suki didn't mention India. I thought they had meetings with India. Yeah, they were having meetings with India. I mean, it's all speculation at this point, right? I mean, clearly Tellurian is trying to make deals, um, but until there's an agreement and the ink is dry on that, like it's all just speculation. It's show me the results at this point, right? Like they because they did this stuff a while ago and they had meetings and sorry, I've been invested in the stock for a while and I still remember the insinuation of that they were having talks with Saudi Arabia back in 2019 or so, I think it was, and nothing ever came of that. And there's been others where things never come, and I know that they're having these conversations, but they're behind closed doors, and I think it's, as we've sort of seen, or at least my interpretation is, they're trying a lot of stuff, but they're also kind of negotiating hard because they've only got one driftwood, right? That's the one thing that I do keep in mind, is that there's only one driftwood, so this is their shot to maximize the value for the company, for the shareholders, of which they are shareholders, and if they're not just going to sign the first deal because this isn't because they're not going to have a lot of chances, right? Once they're done, once they've signed everything away for phase one, then they've only got to, they're what's that, 30 or 40% done with sort of what they have for the company for a while, right? I think it'll be a big, it's not impossible, but it'll be a big feat if they ever expand too much further past driftwood itself. So burned by the MOU with India, exactly. That's why I say, like, it's great that they're meeting with him, and I hope they're trying hard to get a deal, and I hope they do get a deal, right? Like, it makes sense. It still makes sense for them. The macro is still there. India still needs energy, and natural gas is a good source. Like, it makes sense. That's why I'm still invested in the company. The macro is still there, and India is one of the folks on the other side of that, to where it would make sense for them to make a deal. But until they actually make a deal, I'm I'm happy that they're trying, that they're negotiating. But I'm sorry. This is me responding to your original statement of that Suki didn't mention India. Like, I have to imagine they're not going to make too big of a deal out of this, because they're probably not only talking to India, and because things are they're not done till they're done. And I think they hopefully at this point are willing to understand that. Ladder says, how is Next doing in comparison? That is a good question, and I have sorry, I've been busy, sort of personally, and I haven't really seen a whole lot come out of the company itself. I haven't seen a whole lot, coming out from, the rumor mill and speculations too much on how they're doing. I mean, I think one of the things with Next that has certainly been called out, that has sort of changed a bit recently, is some of their counterparties are in China, and I think that might end up being an issue for them, if some geopolitical events progress. I'm not sure that having counterparties in China is going to end up being, helpful for them. Counterparties that are purchasing their LNG, right? The sales and purchase agreements that they have. Ladder says, or other companies trying to finance that export terminal, which is a good question. I don't know. I don't think. Sorry, I've been busy recently, so I haven't been followed along as closely as I had in months past. But I didn't notice. Maybe somebody else on the chat has. If somebody else on the chat knows better than me and can correct me, but I haven't seen anyone sort of green lighting a brand new terminal yet and reaching actual FID. I think we've seen some of the expansions at existing terminals, but there hasn't been any in recent history. And so as much as I think the macro is favorable for this, it's still the proof is in the pudding, right? And so I don't think that we have actually seen that. Which is to say, Tellurian is not so much behind. It's not like everybody else is going forward with their brand new terminals, and Tellurian is stuck nowhere. But I think given that they had their sales and purchase agreements, 2 of the 3 expire. They're probably a little bit behind some other folks that do actually have sales of purchase agreements, but again, it's a mixed bag. All right, Transient Stacker says he mentioned Europe and U.S. gas producers. Yeah, um, that's a good point. I don't know. I don't know why he mentioned certain people and why he doesn't, right? Because at the same time he mentioned Europe there. He also has his other videos where he sort of is scolding Europe for them not doing anything, and sort of railing on the politicians. So I don't know if he's thinking. I'm not reading too much into who he mentioned, who he didn't mention, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah. All right, thanks for the discussion, y'all. This is good. You get me. This is great to have some folks on here. It's exciting. I don't know if you guys have anything else. If not, I don't want to keep you too long, and I will end it and hop off. But if we got a little more discussion, that'd be cool. If y'all got other questions, I haven't been following along to everything as much as I have been recently, and so I'm sorry I don't have great answers for you on some of this stuff. I will have to I am also invested in Next. Sorry, I'm just reading back up. Ladder asked about Next, and I gave some initial thoughts, and I'll have to do some more rereading and go back up and catch myself back up. I guess is what I'm saying. See if there have been any developments. All right, Ladder says one more for me. Let's hear it. Just wait for that. See if I had anything else. I don't think so. Like I said, I'll probably have a future video when I get to fully digest the new presentation and the most recent video from Sharif, and see if there's anything interesting for new valuation model I can sort of put together. If anybody wants to take a look at that, that's how I have fun investing. That's some of the stuff I like to do, put together spreadsheets. Obviously, I got my nice numbers and pretty chart here. All right. Ladder says, I know you might not be able to answer this, but how much more can they invest from the gas sales until they have to stop building because of lack of NTP? Yeah, I don't know definitively. My guess would be not that much more, maybe into Q1, right? And it's not even so much from the gas sales, right? Like the gas sales are, if you look at the numbers, right, they've been spending down mostly the money that they got from issuing debt and issuing shares, right? Because they've got the $600 million on the balance sheet. The money that they're making from the gas is mostly going back in to drill more wells. So they haven't actually been funneling too much money from the gas into there. It's been all of this money they got from the convertible notes, and then also from some of this from the shares they issued a while ago that they've actually been spending. Yeah, nobody really knows. I tried to answer this once. If you do go back and look, you can try to answer this for yourself. Let me find, not that. See if I have the link to it. I don't have the quick link to it, but if you go back and you look at their original contract, they do have sort of this monthly, like basically their milestones they expected to have every month in the original contract, right? Starting from month 1, going on down. And you can, like, somebody with more knowledge in the industry might be able to tell you, yeah, that's probably would cost about this much, and this would cost about this much, and maybe you could work backwards from there. But I think there's, sooner or later they're gonna have to dump a bunch of money into probably ordering, some of the big items that they need, and they're gonna have to actually hire on a bunch of people. And I mean, I think Bechtel is gonna have this Bechtel is not going to want to hire on a bunch of people, right? Hundreds or thousands, right? To be really, really ramping up work at the site until they get that full notice to proceed, right? And so I think the things that they're doing here are the small site preparation work where they can say, well, it's a smaller crew that we can have people work on for a bit, but you know, we need the big pile of money in order to get started. And I covered this in a prior video where they actually need, there's like a defined thing where in order to issue that full notice to proceed, right when they do that, they have to hand over a bunch of money to Bechtel. I think it's on the order of $1 billion, somewhere in that vicinity. And like they're very quickly going to get to the point where they need that pile of money to actually toss over to Bechtel for Bechtel to say, great, now that's enough for us to get started. So yeah, I think partially the answer to your question is that they're already at that point, right? That this was the video from, sort of confirmed in the video from Sharif, a month or two ago. Sorry, time flies. When he basically said, we failed to raise the money we were trying to raise, and because of that, we're now not on the same schedule we were. Right, that now every day that passes is effectively delaying things. And so I think that was the point that I would start measuring it from, to where whatever expectation you had before that they were going to be able to ship LNG, first cargoes in middle of 2026 or Q3 2026, if you believe that, I would start from roughly when they failed to actually raise the notes, raise the debt, to say, well, that's probably the point at which every day is a delay from that point onwards, right? And so if it takes them another 6 months from that date before they can finally actually get the money and have a big pile of cash that they can issue a notice to proceed to Bechtel, like that's what's actually holding them up. So, I mean, I think they, and your question was specifically when will they stop building? I would imagine they still have work for folks to do for another couple of months, but the real question I think you're asking is not necessarily when will they be able to stop building, but it's, or when will they have to stop building, but it's when is it effectively delaying the them being able to ship LNG, right? And that's in more in the more project focused terms, it would be when is getting financing actually on the critical path, right? Because originally it's not on the critical path to get the full financing, to issue the full notice to proceed, right? The site preparation work is all they would be doing anyways, right? Because at the very beginning you have to do some of the site prep work before you can do other stuff. But I think they're clearly past that point at this as of right now. So I know that's not what any of us want things to be, but I think that's the reality of the situation, is that they are being delayed every day at this point, that they don't have the money together. Even if some work is still ongoing, I think that more work should be going on if they were going to be keeping on the schedule. So, all right. I am probably going to hop off. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the discussion. And I really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed the chat and the video today. So, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you later. Have a good one.